And Barbara said that's because of certain personages who are at HCD in Sacramento. That situation hasn't changed either. So
I
the
just said
cities,
anything new that.
right.
There's any new laws.
So actually, the density bonus law actually went into effect since the last housing element was prepared.
Yeah.
So that, now that is in effect, so that's a little bit different, so we need to look at that.
Okay. But you do need a form to do the housing element, you're
Yeah,
saying?
that's part of the state's process is what you need to do is evaluate the progress you've made on your last housing
Right.
element. So did we meet the,
To the goals, yeah.
right,
I
right.
understand.
Have we accomplished those goals? And then, does the community have other input into the housing element, other things that they want to see? So that's part of the process.
Yeah, so I guess the reason I was asking that question, and that was to get a little bit more of the pro and the con, but more into maybe how A might affect the housing element.
Measure A? Measure A, it's in the charter, so it's actually in the housing
I
element talks about
understand.
it's as a constraint, but
Then
it doesn't say anything about.
you need public input. Are you gonna have to do another form for the housing element?
Well, if we have this discussion about the limits and benefits of Measure A, that will satisfy the discussion in the housing element.
Okay.
And that was the idea of having housing element measure discussion.
Oh, okay.
So I'd like to come back to where I think we left off right before the break. I think we got an interesting suggestion from Ann that's on the floor about trying to think about how this piece of the meeting might be structured. And the idea was that it would be a series of panelists. I'm going to throw out a number that's either 4 or 6, and that Ann had suggested that you might solicit from the public who are here today and at other forums, solicit names of people who could be considered. That list would be compiled by staff just to have it in front of you, and then at your next meeting you would go through that list and try and choose what all of the 6 of you would agree is a balanced set of 4 or 6 people.
Would they submit in writing?
They would submit the names in writing, yes. Marilyn, it almost looks like you want to say something else. I'd like to try and focus us on the question of whether that idea is one that could move us forward on this number 2. Yes?
I do want to go back to the comment that you made before the break about the list of issues. And I think you said that this doesn't seem to be conducive to choosing speakers who support one side or another.
No, I said I want to be clear about what I said. I think it would be very difficult to find a speaker on any of these topics where all of you would agree that that speaker will give an objective analysis of how this issue is affected by Measure A.
And I understand what you're saying, but I also want to throw out that this is a real-world application, and I don't think that it's as simple as saying this particular bullet point would satisfy the people in one camp and this in another. I think these are it's my opinion, and there are others around the table, I think these are very valid topics that should come up in a discussion of Measure A, whether, and again, whether you're going to find someone who will speak only against or, that is not my concern, but I think if we are going to try to educate the public and ourselves, then these topics need to be considered. And
yeah, I mean, I'd throw it out as a friendly amendment to my restatement of Ann's proposal that the 4 to 6 speakers that you ultimately invite from this list that you solicit from the public should be asked to speak, should be given this list of issues and asked to try and hit these issues when they talk. Not that every speaker will hit every one of them, and not that you're going to say to this person, your job is to talk about preservation, but I think you would want to give this list, or even an expanded version of it, to all of the 4 or 6 speakers you select, and ask them to think about those issues.
I don't accept that friendly amendment.
Okay.
Because to me, these are very separate disciplines.
Uh-huh.
Some people might be, I think, planners have expertise too, or real estate people or whatever. So someone that's an expert in transportation and transit may know nothing about historic preservation.
Well, she's saying individual speakers on each.
I'm saying that
I think these might be separate topics or combined somehow, but they might be separate topics with different speakers, not trying to have one speaker who can address them all.
No, I'm not saying
I'm
that.
saying-
I'm saying one speaker for each topic.
Okay, got it. Then I accept.
Barbara?
I'm saying that we're getting into dictating the speakers
if there's some developers that if they're allowed to build out, they will divide up in space. And that's something they like to say. And they can say, if they want to say that the sport, it's okay to me.
Captain, Captain Gypsy.
But I think there may be issues that we want to bring out that are beyond this list. I mean, once again, I don't want to put a limit on what the planning board members want to talk about any more than I think they should be putting a limit on.
Okay, I really want to move away, Barbara, from this concept of the planning board members choosing people.
But I don't want to move away from it.
Okay, but,
Neither do I.
okay.
I personally feel that we should. I feel uncomfortable being typecast constantly as being pro.
I'm not typecasting you as being pro. If you want to say you're objective, fine. But you three pick speakers that you think will educate the public, and let us pick three speakers.
Barbara, there's a different proposal on the floor, and I want to come back to it. Ann's made a proposal that we solicit names from the public, those names, and you all are members of the public, that there will be a list of names in writing, as you said, that will be promulgated before the next meeting, and that the 6 of you will reconvene and by consensus choose 4 to 6 speakers off of that list. That's the proposal on the floor.
That would eliminate our ability to pick speakers that we think would give a full picture of the.
How do you know it would eliminate that possibility? I mean, one way that you all might work by consensus when you meet
Because
is...
I've been working in this politics of the city for 30 years. That's all I know.
Well, Barbara, let me just finish my thought if I could. I think one way that the consensus might arise next time is that the 6 of you would say, you know, I'll give you this speaker if you give me that speaker. And that's how you make a decision.
Why not? It's our job to set up the forum. Why not let us pick the speakers? And if they want to solicit from homes or the League of Women Voters who got to speak, that's okay with me. I'm not trying to limit the speakers that they want to have.
Okay, but again, what I'm saying, and I'm saying this on behalf of Rebecca, Ann, and Marilyn, that they, the 3 of them, are not advocates for changing Measure A in the way that the 3 of you are people who stated that you want to.
You're not right about that.
Let me ask Ann and Rebecca and Marilyn, are you all on the record as supporting changes to Measure A?
Yes, yes.
No, we're not talking planning board member, we're talking about as a person, as a resident of this community.
It's a campaign statement.
You know what?
With respect to all of you, this is not about advocacy on either side, so just stick to putting together a workshop that's important, and let's get back to
Okay,
it, come on.
so for this number 2, right now I have 2 ideas on the floor, and I can certainly take others. One idea, and please, if I could, one idea is public solicitation of names. This is not the same thing. And the committee chooses. And the second one is that the planning board members choose half, and that the appellants choose half. I have a sense that we could not get a consensus in favor of either of these 2 concepts. Is there a third concept? I'm looking for a way, I want to limit the discussion to ways we can move, get this number 2 planned. Could any of you see a suggestion in one of these 2 that we might work with, that's something that the 6 of you could consent to? Pat?
How about if we have the planning board members choose speakers that support Measure A and have us choose speakers that don't support Measure A? Kind of like the old mother trip of letting the kid cut the cake in half and you choose which half.
Again, no advocacy, folks.
I mean, but that's an option.
But yeah, it's
As opposed to
it is an option.
half and half.
I like the brainstorming here. Okay, so the planning board members choose A supporters to present, and the appellants choose change proponents.
Right.
Okay, I don't want to evaluate any of these right now. Let's just look for some other concepts. What other ways might we use, Marilyn?
would it be possible to broaden the list of issues? Because I don't think I've heard any of the three members of the appellants suggest any issues that they would want looked at. If they got some of those on the list, would that maybe help the selection of speakers?
If we had a broader list, what would we then do? Your idea is first to broaden the list, and then how would we move to selecting speakers?
Well,
But that would limit what people
Barbara,
talk
please.
about.
Barbara, it's an idea, we're not evaluating. What is your idea? Once the list is broadened, Marilyn, how would we then, as 6 of you, choose speakers?
these are some,
It shuts me up all the time.
these are some issues I threw out, and again, from notes I've taken at council meetings of issues people have raised as our concerns, but, you know, I know that there's some that the three appellants have, I don't know what words.
I wrote up overcrowding because Diane, I think, mentioned it. I had my back turned Pat. But again, I'm being a little hard-nosed here, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Once the list is broadened, how would it help to choose the panelists?
And I'm gonna throw out something else too. What if we don't arrive at consensus? I realize that's what you were hired to do, but then again, with a three and three grouping, maybe we don't, I mean, can we not?
My understanding, I guess we could agree to recommend to the planning board that there be some panelists and that the committee could not agree on how they should be chosen.
Well, I don't think we've talked about it long enough yet.
But that is, I'm gonna put that up as an option. So number 5 is, suggest panel, but not panelists. That would solve the conundrum.
My words,
How
my
about if the appellants don't want to do the public outreach panelists, how about if the planning board solicits panelists through a public outreach program and then makes a recommendation back to this committee?
So it would be a 2-step process. I'm out of paper up here, so I'm
So
gonna make
the-
a 1A. So it's, planning board does,
Have a planning board
Solicitation.
solicits.
and then recommends to committee. Is that right?
Yeah, so we'll do the public solicitation of people who want to comment.
And then the committee would still have to ratify the
Right.
planning board's
Well, first
suggestion.
off, that makes it appear that we don't want people to comment, which certainly is not true.
Hold on,
That is
I'm
not
sorry,
true at all.
I'm falling asleep for a minute there, I shouldn't do that. I'm only looking for ideas here. I'm not looking to evaluate them. There's gonna come a point, I hope, when somebody comes up with an idea where all the heads nod, instead of somebody immediately jumping in and say, I don't like that idea. But we're not there yet. Barbara?
Well, our job, within the job like council, is to come up with something, and, sending it, I mean, the planning board's gonna have great power, there's only one person on the planning board who's ever come out from Measure A, so they've got it's a 6-to-1 vote.
Okay, you're still evaluating. I'm looking for an idea number 6.
Okay, I support number 2.
You support number 2. Okay, but others don't. I'm looking for an idea. We can take a vote on any of these and fail to get 4 votes even, much less a consensus. We don't have anything here that will get a consensus, which is what we agreed to try and do. We don't even have anything, as far as I can tell, that would get a majority vote. So I'm looking for a 6th idea. Pat?
Why don't we just simply aim this at just educational itself, the education of it?
Okay.
And so that isn't a positional, back to Rebecca's point of view, that is not a positional
But then,
stance.
are you saying eliminate number 2, or do
Well,
we
what
still
I'm
have
saying
the panelists?
is that the educational portion of that, as it has to do with the housing element, answers the limits and benefits, and the question and answer discussions would certainly be public input under item number 3. So I think we need to aim at, when we're talking about we can't all agree to that list over there, we can all agree that we want to educate the public. I think we can all agree to
Yes,
that.
I think you have all agreed to that.
That's right. And so I think we do away with the limits and benefits line, and I think we say we do an educational program with question and answers and discussion. That's
Who's
what I
going to
think.
do that educational program?
Well, I think, first off, we talked about reminding being acceptable to everybody.
He's here.
Exactly right. And that pretty much covers it as far as the education is concerned, with some maybe minor additions to some of the issues that are more current. The 1991 Red Brick Building and the square foot limitation.
Right,
And
and I
those
think
two
Woody
things
could
can
cover
simply
those
be
things.
answered by staff. They're the ones that know all about that. The staff knows
Okay,
about
so,
the square foot
so you would,
limitation.
so essentially there's no panel and we replace it with a.
Oh, no, I didn't say no panel. No, what I'm saying is that the educational portion would be the bigger part of the portion of it. And the question and answer would be directed, I would think, to these 6 people would be the panel. Because these 6 people have the expertise of, can't imagine any question somebody from the public would be able to ask without us being able to come up with an answer.
Again, Rebecca, you go ahead.
It sounds good, but, I can't imagine each of us trying to respond to somebody's question. I think it's gonna get really carried away.
Each one of us wouldn't have to, but
Well,
questions could be.
no, we wouldn't, but I think we would try to.
I have the
concerned
concern
about
that it
that.
casts the planning board members
Well, I think that
as
you have
taking
ground
a
rules for
stand
that,
on
and you
this.
say to the public, if you wish to have, ask a question, please direct it to a member of the panel. And then we would all agree that whoever that question was directed to would be the person that answered the question. We'll
But-
talk about that.
Yeah, but
And,
to try to, can I just say one thing about that? In the interest of building consensus, I like Pat's idea in general of going back to education
Right.
and having not only Woody's component, but another component that kind of gets at.
Right, to answer some of the other
Yes.
more technical things.
So then, well, that's all.
Okay, so
I
the
do like that.
suggestion here is that there's I don't know where to write this, but that there's an add 1A, which is a staff presentation on current staff.
On the more technical things, like ordinance, what the ordinance reads, what the ordinance does, the square foot limitation, and how that affects it. That's simple.
Okay,
Staff
so
can do that.
without regard for how we do number 2, would everyone agree to add this number 1A?
No, because I don't trust that to give the context. I don't, it's trust, T-R-U-S-T. And I go back to the MTC, WRT meeting.
Well,
where
that's
we
just
had
a technical
a
portion
scale
of Barbara.
And make total misstatements about the various.
Could it, I mean, I don't know. if
So,
this
I mean,
helps,
I
but-
don't trust them to even be accurate. I also won't digress into what they did about the part of the workload ordinance they recently
Oh,
ignored.
yeah, that's.
So, but the reason I raised my hand is that we need to follow the direction from the city council. And the city council includes the facts, the benefits, and the limitations of Measure A. This is supposed to be a forum on Measure A in the context of transportation and the housing element. And I don't think we go back and tell the city council, say, we're sorry, we don't want to do that.
Okay, so where we are right now is we've got 5 suggestions over here for doing number 2. We've got a suggestion number 6, which is to add a 1A, but I'm not sure it actually solves the problem of how to do number 2, and we couldn't get consensus for that either. I'm gonna look for idea number 7 about how to do this item number 2. What is a way that I think we've agreed there needs to be some group of people sitting in front of this forum who talks about benefits and limits. And I don't know how to select those people, man.
I'd like to understand a little bit more what people's concern about 1A is, because maybe I can modify that. That we do a solicitation and ask for people's interest qualifications in speaking on these different issues, and, evaluate those and bring them back publicly, maybe at a meeting where people can talk about it, and, see if we can, match speakers up with their expertise, because I don't think, I'm a planner, I have an expertise in waterfront planning, but I don't have an expertise in historic preservation. I would like to hear from experts in historic
Okay,
preservation.
so who are the people who have and are you more into 1A right now, or is 1 as good term also? your idea of just having the committee choose, rather than, your idea 1A was to do a public solicitation, and the planning board chooses and then sends it back to you.
Oh, you know what, I'm sorry, I didn't mean the planning board, I meant the committee.
So you meant the, so it's
Yes,
really number
I'm
one
sorry.
you like. So who are the people who have a concern about Ann's idea number one? That there be a public solicitation,
I'm sorry.
and then the committee, through consensus, chooses, and obviously you're only gonna get consensus if you either do some horse trading or you find 4 or 6 candidates that you all like. You're not gonna get consensus of 6 of you by 3 of you getting to choose all the speakers. Who has a problem with that approach?
So long as you rise under 1A,
We're not gonna,
PB.
I'm
yeah, we're not
sorry,
gonna do
I
1A.
didn't
We're
mean
just
that.
talking about
I'm really
1.
sorry.
She meant 1 when
I
she
meant
said
1.
1A.
Yeah.
So the public, we're gonna do, so the idea on the floor,
She means under 1A, though, just to, it's not the planning board, it's this committee.
Wait, what's CTE again?
committee.
Not PB.
Okay.
But, okay, so Ann, is your idea that
We,
the committee's gonna solicit, is the planning board or the committee gonna make the initial selection?
The committee.
The committee. That's what I meant
And
here.
I'm sorry, okay, and then the committee makes the recommendation to planning.
Right, which is part of your overall recommendation.
Right.
Right. Okay, so with that idea, that's really what I meant by this number 1. And I'm sorry my notes are unclear, but, so with that understanding, looks like all 6 of you said you don't object to it, which isn't to say you really supported it, but that's what consensus is about.
So far, yeah.
No, I objected because I don't like a 6-to-1 planning board deciding.
No, the planning board is not.
Yeah, it's not 1A.
It's
It's
the committee's gonna make a
The
recommendation.
committee.
But the committee will make a recommendation on specific speakers to the planning board.
No.
Yes, no, that's absolutely true.
That's what we're supposed to do.
The
That's-
recommendations of this committee do go to the planning board.
No, wait a minute, I'm unclear on this. So what you're saying, what is unclear, if we solicit public speakers for the forum,
Right,
and this committee selects those speakers,
that's right.
so what, but
Barbara's
the outcome
concern,
of
which-
that would be what goes to the planning board, not the speakers going to the planning board to get approved. But-
Well, anything this committee does goes to the planning board to be approved. See, that's the big.
Before the forum.
Before the forum, and that's the big,
But Barbara, I guess I would say to you, you can't avoid that. That is a problem in the whole system to the extent it's a
Yeah, it
problem
is.
at all.
And so-
There's nothing you can do to keep the planning board from reviewing your recommendations. That's in our ground rules, it's in our
Yeah.
charge. So to the extent you're uncomfortable with that, you need to go back to the council and ask them to change that. But right now, the
you don't
rules.
think I could figure that out all by myself?
I absolutely think you can figure that out by yourself. What I'm saying is there's no point in our discussing it right now, because it is in the rules that we've been given.
But I think the concept is, my concept is that the 3 appellants be allowed to pick speakers, and that we ask the planning board to approve our right to do that. And if they may decide not to do that, but I don't want, if we get a specific list of speakers, they could say, well, I don't want,
A, but I do want B, and that
yeah,
kind of thing.
and so
Sure,
we
you
end
can-
up with speakers, so
Sure.
that we don't have any speakers at all. Granted, if that happens, we'll just appeal it again to council, but,
Okay, so Marilyn, I really am gonna come to you, but I think in summary, Barbara, what you're saying is that you really still prefer number 2.
of course.
And that
yeah.
you are willing, unfortunately, to block consensus on number 1. We almost had a consensus in favor of number 1.
Do we?
I said, does anyone object to number 1? And no one said anything. And then it sat for a minute, and then you said, I really would like to do number 2. But we were very close to a consensus in favor of number 1. So I'm just, I guess I just want to ask one more time, is there any chance we could get a consensus on this?
No, not that I better understand that it goes back for approval to the planning board, and I agree with Barbara.
Everything you do, though, you understand.
I understand that, but if in fact we've selected, we being those who support Major A as the appellates, If we select our speakers and the planning board doesn't approve those speakers, well, then that's one thing. But I agree with Barbara, if we submit a list of speakers that this committee has approved, there's nothing saying the planning board can't cherry pick it or whatever. And I agree with Barbara, I think it's simpler, easier, clearer, and whether the planning board members wish to be labeled that or not, let's not label them that. Let's just say that that is their charge in this process, that the appellates are gonna pick 3 speakers and the planning board members will pick 3, not pro Measure A or con Measure A. Let's
Marilyn
take those
has another
labels.
idea,
What
perhaps.
I'm gonna suggest is a hybrid, and what I would say is it's a hybrid of 1 and 2. Say that, if Ann, Rebecca, and Marilyn were to do the public solicitation of, I think, both topics and speakers that the public would suggest and come up with, I'm not even gonna put a number on it, if the appellant members were to get together or talk with their colleagues or whatever, and come up with a list of names and come back the next time we convene, and then we can go forward to the planning board with a 50-50 proposition. And the only caveat there is we do, you're right, it was a unanimous council vote that we must go back to the planning board, which was the planning board motion originally too. They can do with it what they will. That's where the trust may come in. I think they want to move this process forward.
Okay, so Marilyn, your idea, which I'm gonna cleverly number 7, is that half the panel selected by public solicitation, reviewed by 3 planning board members. Is that right? The 3 of you. And half the panel selected by appellants.
And by the way, to clear that up, she said that they would select the topic and the speakers, and I would assume that would be your topics, not the topic of the forum overall. Topics of the forum.
Well, I think if I can, it seems to
Well, that
me
has to
that,
be clear.
the 3 of them as planning board members would use the method they felt appropriate to do the public solicitation and choose some speakers.
Well, that's fine, so long as the speakers are speaking to exactly the same issue that we've all agreed on. In other words, Marilyn has her list of things over there that she loves, and that's her agenda over there. So if we're saying she gets to pick the topic of what these speakers are going to speak on her behalf, and that's their agenda, then we say that, are we put in the same box that we now need to come up with people who address exactly the same topics to offset that?
Absolutely not.
Because that
The 3
becomes
of
a
you
problem.
would choose anyone you wanted to. Right? Is that right in your proposal, Marilyn? The 3 of you would, as appellants, would choose whoever you want.
In any
Rebecca?
topic you wish.
And any topic you wish.
Okay.
I'm going to try a little simpler thing that gets directly to what Barbara and Pat raised, is if our proposal to the planning board stipulates that this committee chooses, so we go back to 1A, but we don't give them the list to approve, we just say that the committee will select
Build it in.
the people that will serve on.
I could agree with that.
Okay, so essentially it's number 1, but saying committee chooses without PB second guessing.
Yeah, they just don't approve the list. They approve the saying, yeah, you can select a committee, but they don't approve the actual list.
I think you can, Marilyn asked, can you do that? I think you absolutely can do that. Now, you need to understand, everything you do can be ignored by the planning board as a whole, right? We all know that. But you can make a recommendation that says, we have chosen this group, and we recommend that you not second guess it, and that if you want to make any changes, you need to give it back to us, and we'll change it for you.
Actually, I find it very interesting because in here, from what you wrote, about 1/2 being solicited by the planning board and the other half by the appellants, we're right back to Barbara's original thing.
This is Barbara's number 2 with a different statement about what the 3 planning board members will
No,
do.
originally, when her original thing was, You pick 3, we pick 3.
And we can get out of here.
Absolutely, and that's what I wrote here as number
Right.
2.
Right.
It is Barbara's original idea, it's just got an extra
Twist.
clarification
Well,
or
it's
twist
just
as to
been
what the
rewritten
planning board
in a
members will do.
different manner.
So I think we've got number 1 here, with the caveat that the planning board would not second guess it, and we've got number 7 over here, which is very similar to number 2, it's just, which was Barbara's original proposal, just with a caveat as to what the planning board members will do. So I'm gonna guess that between 1 modified and 7, we're close to a decision. Pat?
My only question on the panel selected by public solicitation, are we saying that we are limiting that to members of the community who are actively involved or interested, or are we saying that public solicitation includes hired consultants? What are we saying? I mean, are we taking away their right, if they want to hire a consultant, are we taking away that right by wording in that they're going to select from a public solicitation?
Well,
In other words,
let me answer
Yeah.
that partially, and then Kathy may have to answer part. I think the public can certainly suggest a speaker who does not live in Alameda and who may need to be paid for his or her time.
okay, and
So
so then
now,
what's the city's position going to
Would,
be on that?
are funds available to help pay people? I don't know.
We have, as long as we can use this information for the housing element, we have funds available to pay speakers. I mean, given it's not an outrageous amount of money.
You're not gonna fly
Oh, so
someone
Al
from
Bill-
Seoul, Korea.
Al Gore or somebody like that.
But
So I'm
it might be a
very
little-
worried about the,
You won't have to worry about that.
Okay, so I think the answer we've heard is that the funds would be available and the planning board would do the solicitation. And the 3 planning board members would do their solicitation and they would be able to select who they wanted to.
okay, so
And we appellants get to do the
it's
same.
same, yes.
That's right.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's okay with me?
So I think this is number 7.
Just in time for your baby.
No, Rebecca's not
No, I
there.
still prefer number 1.
You guys still prefer number 1?
Yeah, I prefer number 1.
You do? Okay.
It's a half and half thing.
Actually, I prefer number 2.
What if, God forbid, we agree on panelists that we don't need, you know?
Okay, so
half and half?
I hear Barbara
How can we agree
and
on someone?
others all saying, let's do number 1. We're gonna do a public solicitation. The committee's gonna make a consensus selection. That consensus selection is gonna be part of the report to the planning board, and it's gonna clearly state in the report that that group should be used as panelists as a whole, without any changes, and if the planning board desire to make any changes, the committee should get to a
What I
reconsider.
want to send to the planning board is that they get to pick their speakers, we get to pick ours. And if the planning board doesn't approve who we choose to speak.
Okay, that is number 7.
Members here, the planning board itself.
I'm talking about, I don't want to send a list of names to the planning board to be approved, because I think the 3 planning board members should have the right to pick. What I want to send to the planning board is that the 3 planning board members have their right to pick their speakers for whatever educational purposes you want, and that we have a right to to pick our speakers, and I think 2 speakers or 3 speakers, whatever. But the planning board agrees that we have the right to pick those speakers, and that's, I'm not against public solicitation, but I think what I want to send to the planning board is that the 3 planning board members have a right to pick their speakers, and the 3 appellants have a right, because it's not the same as giving them a list of names, because then they have to vote to turn down the right of people to pick speakers to represent them.
Let me go back and clarify
This is
what I
a
said
political
again.
question.
No, that's not what I said before. I said that the proposal that went to the planning board was not a list of names. It was, but there is a difference between what you're saying. It's saying that this committee collectively makes that choice rather than half and half. And to me, that's an important distinction, just because I'd like to see if we can, as Ann said, maybe we actually would agree on, we agreed on Woody, so maybe, yeah, there are others, and that And we start.
How about this
That-
suggestion?
That is important.
Let me suggest a way that maybe would break this. Could we agree to do a solicitation before the next meeting? At that meeting, to attempt to choose either 4 or 6 panelists that all 6 of you agree on. And agree that if that proves impossible within an hour or however long we want to spend, that then we do have a fallback, which is that you will recommend to the planning board that the appellants get to choose 2 or 3, and that either the 3 planning board members or the planning board as a whole would choose the other 2. But that you at least try to do the solicitation and choose 4 or 6 that you can agree on. And we'll see where we get. Diane? Okay. All right, we have a decision, and it's 3:45, and, okay. So, yeah, let's,
We're doing the solicitation.
no, it's a solicitation from the committee as a whole.
Right.
The committee as a whole, as of this moment, is soliciting all of you and itself and others to suggest names, and I would presume with like a paragraph biography or something about who the person is and why they should speak on this issue. And it's any issue, it's about either an ability to speak on either the limits, the benefits, or both of Measure A with regard to any of the items that are buried under this list, or any other important items that you all think. And it will be, I would propose that people be asked to provide their name, contact information, and a paragraph, no more than, 50 words, explaining why they're an appropriate speaker.
So we could put a little public notice.
We need to limit how many words, or, some people might just want to attach their resume or something, rather than make them create a new document.
Well, it's up to you. My concern is that, if you got my resume, it's 3 pages long, and do you as a committee want to read through 50 3-page resumes as opposed to 50 paragraphs? I'm trying to make your job easier. If you put,
No, I don't mind reading.
Yeah, I
okay,
think they should submit.
so they can submit whatever they want.
Form
They want to submit a brochure, that's
Hopefully
fine.
not movies.
No movie, but people can submit whatever they like.
If they submit a vote I want, if they submit a vote I won't vote for.
Animated.
Kathy, could you read that back for us?
That was a comedy.
Brian, can you read back what we just decided?
Sure, yeah, so we're soliciting public comment.
I think you should read it literally from your screen, and if it's
Well,
not written.
I was still listening.
We'll give you a minute,
Okay,
you
well,
go ahead and type it.
Okay.
Because this group wants to know what you're writing. Maybe this is the moment when we'll turn on our screen.
Good, you paid for it, let's use it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wonder from Kathy if we can put this on the solicitation on the city's
Not
website?
comment.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, well, I'll go around the room and everybody can tell me how they think they would like to solicit.
How would you like to do that?
Solicit the names. So we have the city's website.
I heard an ad in the paper.
Well, let's not give the elevator journal.
No.
Nobody
No
reads it.
report.
If public announcements.
Sorry, I'm not asking people.
Anyway, you
No,
think
I
they
can't.
Word of mouth.
How much money it adds, there's been that paper.
How about this? On the web, we'll do a press release because it's broadcast.
Sure.
Anybody can pick it up.
Sure, that's a good thing.
Anything else?
Well, I mean, everybody's willing to make some phone calls and push some arms.
I'm sure that will go on.
I'm sure that will go on.
And we just talk about this list, does this list everybody's issues?
I think we can add to the list, but I want to be clear, this list is neither a limitation
Right.
nor a
It's an EG,
requirement.
for example.
It's a for example, that's
For
right.
example,
There is neither, someone might suggest a speaker who speaks on none of these items, someone might suggest a speaker who speaks on one of them, and someone might suggest a speaker who can speak on 2, 3, or all. Those are all equally legitimate suggestions.
But they are a limitation on what can be addressed.
No,
They are not.
Do you have others
That's
that
right.
you'd like to
No, no.
add?
Yeah.
For example.
Well,
For
I've gone
example.
through some of this before I come up with them.
No, this doesn't limit us, Barbara, it's not just those issues. or item.
It's just important.
Such as.
It's, yeah, we can have them speak on any issue or item
So
that
Brian,
we believe
As
is
far as I'm
pertinent.
concerned, the motion that was approved by the council defines it.
Right,
And once they throw the housing element, they open the door.
yes, that's true, because, but the housing element basically addresses all of those issues anyway.
And the literature behind that decision, and the WRP and the PUC and God knows what else, general plan in it. although
Quite,
it
but
wasn't
quite
in the
frankly, we
motion.
kind of need some new,
so we're asking,
more relevant to.
speakers will be nominated with a statement of their name, contact information, and their qualifications.
I think there was one that Marilyn might have mentioned, sort of diversity of housing type.
Yeah.
I see that on there.
Yeah, I did miss that. I knew there was one I missed at the end when she was talking fast.
You know, I mean,
I really feel strongly that there's probably people who have certain levels of expertise, but it's not anything that you really would put on a resume, but just that they have collected certain facts over the years, and that they're just a quote-unquote concerned citizen.
That's good, they can put that into a paragraph and put it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I think Brian's close to done here. What is this an accurate summation of what we just discussed? The committee will solicit public suggestions for speakers to present on the limitations and/or benefits at the forum. Public suggestions will be submitted with name, position, and contact information, if you could add, Brian, and qualifications.
What does the position mean?
What does it mean? Title, what their job, what they do in the world.
That's immaterial.
Experience.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take it out.
Just qualifications.
Just qualifications. So it's name, contact information, and qualifications.
If they
The
have no
committee-
qualifications other than just living here, that is a qualification.
Maybe
Can we just read the whole
interest-
thing, because I know not everybody can read.
Otherwise, it makes it sound like we're only one professionals, which is not the truth.
Okay, should I read this out, or I know Marilyn's ready to edit it. Can everybody read it on their own, or should I read it out?
Can you read it?
Okay, the committee will solicit public suggestions for speakers to present on the limitations and/or benefits at the forum. Public suggestions will be submitted with name, contact information, and qualifications. The committee will select from this list of suggestions by consensus. If, after a period of time, consensus cannot be reached on speaker selection, proposal number 7 will be used, in which the planning board selects half of the speakers from the list and the appellants select the other. The speakers will speak on issues suggested by the committee or any other relevant issues. Marilyn?
So, at the end of the first sentence, toward the end of the first sentence, will present on the limitations and/or benefits of Measure A.
Okay.
And
Can somebody add that?
After benefits, I think that- and then the next sentence is, public suggestions will be submitted where, to whom?
Will be suggested to, we should maybe
Well,
put a specific person's name?
Well, right, they should just probably come back to me.
You.
To Kathy Woodbury, okay.
I'll collect them for you.
Disperse.
And they should be submitted in writing, that was the other thing we did say earlier, and I think that makes Kathy's job easier, it's not. and
Right,
Does
just-
email count as writing?
May I
So in
ask,
writing or email?
Electronically or?
may I ask if you stick in there under, before you say, qualifications, if you put a slash and make interest slash qualification, because that makes it look like we're only soliciting professionals, and I don't want that to appear to be
Okay,
a fact.
so it's an interest.
Interest
slash
and/or
and/or
slash
Experience,
qualification.
experience, because experience could be your
Yeah.
living
Interest, yeah, whatever.
Interest, experience, and/or
Slash
qualifications.
Put experience in there, that would be
Interest,
good.
experience.
And then,
Oh, slash. Interest,
okay.
comma, experience, and/or.
or.
I'm such an English one. I just, yeah, the USA Today way of writing things. I hope there's no reporter for this.
Yeah, I think the committee will select speakers from this list,
Sure.
but I also think we want to be clear that this is in addition to
Public
public
speaking.
comment. I mean, everybody's
Yes,
like, oh, yeah.
absolutely.
So we need to make that
I
clear.
had added the motion from the council was on tax limitations and benefits of Measure
Uh-huh.
A. You left out facts.
Oh.
You've got
Okay,
limitations and
right,
benefits.
okay.
And also it was in the context of transportation and the housing element.
Benefits measure, so you want that put in after Measure A?
After the benefits of Measure A, in the context of transportation and
The housing element.
housing element, because that was the motion by the council, and that's our direction.
Oh, and 3 lines up from.
Brian, you should put that back in right there.
Yeah.
Not there. Move it though, please.
Yeah.
Drop it. Yeah, I want to be very clear, maybe we need to even write this in. We're talking only about, I don't know where my agenda went, but we're talking about number 2. We're not talking about all public comment. I think we all are aware of that.
Right.
When we meet again, we're going to have to talk about that public comment period some more to make sure we all have a sense of it.
David?
Yes.
We're going to have 3 lines from the bottom. So if after a period of time consensus cannot be reached on speaker selection, proposal number 7 will be in which it's the planning board members of this forum, not the.
Isn't that I'm not clear about?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's not, planning board subcommittee.
Subcommittee,
Yeah.
ad hoc committee
Ad
members.
hoc committee members.
And it's not clear to me, if we go to proposal number 7, do either groups have to select from the list? Or are they then selecting, are you just selecting?
No, I thought that we were being given the right to select.
Yeah, I mean, you don't lose your right to select in any time.
No, he was saying, is our selection limited?
The words up here,
To the
that you-
solicitation.
a strict reading of this says that the planning board committee members will select from the list. The appellants will simply select without regard to the list. And perhaps that is,
You shouldn't limit the planning board members to selecting
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
They should be able to select whoever they want,
Yeah.
if we go to number 7.
yeah, okay. And I mean, I just asked by consensus, do we need the reference to number 7? I'm just going to confuse me later.
Yeah.
I would just say, just get rid of the in which, just say the planning board. Yeah, from there back to proposal number 7. And when we say after a period of time, we mean after a period of discussion at our next meeting.
Right.
And we didn't specify exactly how long that discussion is, but I think it's better to put that up there. We're not saying a period of weeks or months. We're saying after some discussion, but whenever we all start tearing our hair out at the next meeting, that's when we go to Plan B.
So is it by the end of the next one?
Yeah. Should we change it to say it's by the end of the next meeting? Is that-
No.
No, let's,
Because we need
Okay.
to get it all done at the next meeting.
I agree, but I hate to throw in phrases that turn out to be weapons.
All right, limit your.
Okay, so is this good the way it is?
Yes, I want to finish it at the next meeting.
So-
There's just one, the planning board and how committee members will select. Just a grammar.
Will select, this should be will select.
How can I get a zip to engineering, the latest
And then you'll make it clear.
traffic study that's been done
Will select.
in Alameda, the level of service study?
Yeah, that would be through Public Works. Public Works, right. If you contact Barbara Hawkins, I think she can.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock.
And is she out of that?
The one thing, I guess, before you all leave, that I want to say, the other thing we will write up, and I've lost the piece of paper, but we did agree to do a number 1, yes, right on there. We agreed that there's going to be a number 1, which is Woody Minor presenting, and maybe Kathy, you can have it to do to contact Woody and make sure he's willing to present on the history. We have a number 2, which is a set of panelists with Q&A, and we have a number 3 with public input. We still need to work out both 2 and 3, but we do, I just want to make sure we all agree. We have a general consensus that this is the direction in which we're heading. Okay, so at our next meeting, we will talk about selecting the panelists, the exact format of number 2, the format of number 3, and some guidance on venue, time, and meeting length. Thank you all. We will be in touch for our next meeting.